So what do you do when you start off your marriage with over $60,000 of debt? It might not sound like the most ideal way to start your lives together, but in this episode, we're going to share our journey of how we overcame this amount of debt and what we learned throughout the process. Plus, we'll also give some encouraging advice to those of you who may be in a similar situation. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome to the Marriage Inside Out podcast, where we teach couples how to become mission focused, learning to work together as a team to build a solid foundation for their household. I'm Khalil, and this is my Proverbs 31 woman. Yes, you all may know her as AJ, but I call her Adrian. Let's go ahead and make some noise for the lady of the house. Yes.
Making me blush.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So we have an exciting episode lined up because we're going to get to share our journey towards financial freedom, and in particular, our story of how we were able to pay off a pretty hefty student loan debt over the course of about 2.5 years. And I mean, yeah, this is just something that we've really been looking forward to sharing.
Yeah, and it's such a relevant topic, I think, especially in these present times. It's easy to get caught up and really start to think about where you are spending your money and why, whether you're single in this season, but especially if you are married, like what that looks like for you together to continue to pay off those car loans or mortgage, of course, student loans, which is what we're going to touch base on today. All of those areas are relevant in marriage because we know that it can actually be a divider in many marriages, finances.
Yeah, yes, and I mean, for us, this is actually our first time sharing this story, I would say in full, just, from directly from our own voices. We did have the opportunity a couple years ago to share this story with one of our good friends named Rod Reedy. He has a platform called Financial Destination. Yes, shout out to Rod. But yeah, so this will really be our first time just sharing all the nuts and bolts. So we're gonna do the best that we can to give you all as much detail as possible and to be as transparent as possible with you all, so that hopefully this can give you all some hope. But shall we just start from the beginning?
Yes, story time.
Story time. All right. Well, let's get into it. So these loans, which they are student loans, they were student loans that we paid off. They came about from me. I was the bringer of the loans. Thankfully, my wife, she had all of her schooling covered through scholarships. She was a star athlete, y'all, in college. But yes, had her schooling paid for. Thankful for that. But for me, this came from my bachelor's and master's programs. Thankfully, I had, my PhD program paid for in full, was able to have assistantships and all of that. But for most of my time when I was at Troy working on my bachelor's and master's, I did have my tuition paid for during undergrad. I took out some student loans, but the chunk of it came from my master's program because none of that was paid for. I mean, that was really where a lot of it accumulated, and most of my loans were what's called unsubsidized loans. All of them except for one was unsubsidized. And if for those of you all who may not be familiar with those terms, or maybe you've heard of them, so when you have a subsidized loan, then that means that the government will pay the interest on that loan while you're still in school. Obviously, when you get done with school, the interest will start, but all of my loans except for one were just accumulating an interest while I was in college. And so if you fast forward, I work on my PhD, that's another 4 years. And then by the time we got married, which was August of 2015, our loan amount had ballooned to over $60,000. All right, 61,000 $11.97 to be exact. We're showing an image of that for you all right now. But yes, needless to say, the interest just wreaked havoc and it just blew up. But I think you obviously have an interesting perspective, seeing that you were coming into this.
Yeah. And I mean, admittedly, I never really saw it as Khalil's loans and then I'm free and he needs to get it together before we get married or before something happens. I really saw it as our own loans, and we were going to tackle it together by any means necessary, even before we got married, starting to think strategically about what that could and should look like, and it really evolved from there. And I mean, of course, kind of the start of the story was when one of my good friends and her now husband, shout out to Dominique, gave us Financial Peace University, December of 2015, and that really kind of,
yeah,
I guess,
that was the catalyst.
Yeah.
That was the boost. So when you talk about like when was the turning point for us, that was really the turning point for us. I mean, because up until that time, we were obviously making the minimum payments on the loan, but we weren't, really attacking it aggressively. And I obviously wasn't paying anything towards it during my time in college because I was just focusing on school.
Trying to get through.
I probably should have if I would have rewind. If I could rewind, I definitely would have. But yeah, so that was the catalyst. And then that program, obviously some of you all are familiar with that program. Maybe I've gone through that program. A lot of great tips, but that really was the boost for us.
The wake-up call.
Yeah, that was a wake-up call that really got us thinking, okay, like we just need to get rid of this thing and any debt that is in our path. Like, how can we just, knock it out? And so going into January 2016, that's when we really buckled down.
Yeah.
We started just planning things out, and that's when we started to pay above and beyond the monthly amount. And from that point on, we were just on a mission.
Exactly. And we really tried to focus in on certain specific areas of those loans to pay off first. So because when you look at the loans, they were all separate little loans, and we were like, you know what, we need a small victory first. So let's go after one of the smallest loans. It's less than $5,000, and let's be strategic and just keep this end in mind, right? And then build from there. And that really helped us gain momentum.
Exactly. Yes. And as we're showing you all on the screen right now, as we started just really focusing in, it was just, you started to see the effects, pretty soon off. I mean, in April of 2016, we had gotten the total down already to almost around 50 grand, so even just in that short amount of time, we were able to accomplish a lot. And I mean, mind you, during this time, our total gross yearly income was around $110,000. So, some people might be thinking like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, we used to think like, oh man, these folks paid off debt. They must have just been balling, right?
Yeah,
but
or worked like 5 jobs at one time.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so our again, that's our gross income. That wasn't our net income.
Yeah.
So our gross income combined was around 110 grand a year. But yeah, I mean, we really just, from that point on, if we did receive any bonuses or any raises in income, which by the Lord's grace, we did see some increase. We just really made sure that we applied those increases towards paying more on the loans.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And then finally in February of 2018, that was the final blow.
Yes.
Yes, we, made the last payment.
Hit the buzzer. We did it.
Yes, we did it, and it just felt so amazing just to make that one final payment. We're showing this to you guys on the screen right now, but just to see that paid in full, on the screen, like zero balance. I mean, that was just like,
yeah, I mean, I know I felt the weight lifted, but I can only imagine just your, feeling and thought process. Even, I know I said a little bit of the background, but early on, like Kalu was so mission focused that he was like, we're not going to get married till I pay off these loans after I graduate, like super tunnel vision.
That was my mindset.
That was his mindset. So I was like, man, babe, like we did this together. And there's just that feeling of accomplishment and celebration. So we ended up celebrating by going to a nice dinner and just relishing in it, but not becoming complacent either, right? Continuing to look forward and look ahead because we built some good habits along the way.
Right, exactly. And I mean, what's interesting is that in total, it took us 2.5 years in total from the time that we were married, but actually when you think about from the time when we started being aggressive
In
towards
January.
paying them off, it only took 26 months.
Yeah.
So just a little over 2 years. And so, I think that's another thing to as I think about it and reflect on it, is like, that time really just flew by as we just locked in and as we got focused. But, I know you all are hearing this story and you might be thinking like, okay, great.
great.
You guys paid off $60,000
Kudos.
of loans, $61,000 in 2 years. Great. But exactly how did you do it? I always like to know like the nitty gritty, like what was the actual step-by-step process in terms. And so, you want to kind of share, like you kind of shared a little bit, but.
Yeah. Our strategy, as I mentioned earlier, really started with paying off those small loans first. So we took a look, also evaluating the interest rates on the various loans, and decided the ones that weren't growing exponentially and were small might be those milestones we needed to take out some income from where we were using it elsewhere, and really prioritize checking those off, getting that line in the sand. So that really helped us just build confidence that we could do it together.
Right. And it was particularly those ones under $5,000 that, we just said, you know what, we're going to start with the smallest ones, knock those out. And then after that, we decided, okay, let's go for the big bosses.
Yes.
I'm kind of talking video game talk right now. Let's go after the big hitters. So from that point on, we then decided to go and attack the biggest loans, and to try to get all of them under $9,000. So again, first we knocked down the smallest ones, knock those out, and then we try to get everything to under $9,000. And from that point, we then targeted, okay, which of these loans has the highest interest rate? Let's go ahead and knock that one out first, and then bit by bit. And yeah. And it's funny, but it's cool because it was like each time we knocked out one of the loans, it was like a video game in a sense. It was like, all right, we beat level 1, we beat the first boss, for all you video game fans out there. And then everyone felt like, okay, we're getting to the final boss. And then once we delivered that final blow, it was like, all right, game over.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, like we mentioned before, there were a lot of things that we had to give up in the process. And we'll talk about, a few of those details as well, in terms of like what we actually learned through the process about prioritizing and making sure that intentionality and action are there as well.
Right. So let's go ahead and jump into that and talk about, just what were the things that we learned. There are really 3 key things that we want to share with you all that we learned throughout this process that we feel could, be of help to those of you listening right now.
Yeah. The first is to have a plan. Have a plan and make that plan together. At Marriage Inside Out, we really talk about establishing your mission, your vision, your values for your marriage. And once you have that, you can begin that targeting on those specific areas that you want to improve. So for us, we do quarterly evaluations of our goals, and finance is one of those targets that we seek to, those categories that we seek to focus on. So every single quarter, we made sure that those financial goals related specifically to student loans. We tried to incorporate some other, financial priorities, but everything else kind of fell to the wayside, if you will. We gave up some other things so that we could make that the focus.
Absolutely. And I think the second thing that we learned and took from that was just to be aggressive. Be aggressive. Be aggressive. I know it sounds like a cheer. But for real though, be aggressive. We really made it a point to say, you know what, we're not just going to do the bare minimum. Like we're going to go above and beyond. And as we mentioned before, like any raises, any bonuses we receive, we're like, okay, we're adding this on. And it's funny because it really just, it stirs you as you're going through it, as you're being aggressive, and you start to see those things just chip away. You start to see the trees fall, and you just like, man, okay, it gives you a rush in a sense, like, let's just keep pounding it out. And so, that's one thing that we really encourage those of y'all who may have some debts or loans of some sort, but it's just to be aggressive as you're able, and understanding that doesn't always mean that you have to pay super duper above and beyond. Obviously gauge what you're able to do, even if it's just a little bit more each month.
$5,
$5, $10.
That makes a difference.
That makes a difference. Exactly. Anytime you can just go into the principal and start to shave that off, because obviously that's what, the interest draws from. So, just being aggressive.
Yeah,
Really is key.
exactly. And the third point is to make sure that you continue to live.
Yeah.
For us, that was a really big priority. We totally understand those that choose to sacrifice everything in life to make sure that they're living bare minimum in order to pay off their loans, and kudos to you. For us, we really wanted to make sure that we were able to still go on vacations, to enjoy time together, to eat well, to take care of ourselves, while still being intentional with how we were using our finances and paying off those loans.
Right. And even during that time, I mean, we still, made giving a priority.
Right.
Like that's, one of our priorities, one of our values is to give as the Lord has blessed us to give, as unto him. So we still gave during that time. We still put money, we still saved money, putting it towards emergency fund during that time as well. We were still, making these things a priority. And even, as my wife was mentioning, we still went on vacation. We even bought a house during that time. During the time that we were paying off our debts. I know for some people that might be a big no-no, but for us, it was able to work. And so just realizing, whatever your situation is, you don't have to resort to just eating ramen noodles and canned beans every day. Like it is possible to still live, to still have other priorities while you're making this a priority. But again, if you prefer to, just be very, very frugal.
Yes.
If that works for you and your household, by all means, go for it. But yeah, we just want to show that you can still live even while going through this process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then just our final encouragement for you guys, in addition to those three main ways that you can begin to take those steps to pay off your loans if you're looking to, is to not be scared of debt. Period. We're not encouraging you to go into debt by any means, but I think there's this either or. You either have a bunch of debt or you're debt free, right? Everyone wants to be debt free forever, right? But if you think about anyone's story that's sharing it, and even ours, we want to say in transparency, in the moment when we paid off our student loans, we were debt free, but our mortgage. No other debts, no credit card debts, anything like that. Debt free, but our mortgage. However, as we've grown in different seasons of life, we've had to buy some cars. A new car for me, and then new used, but used cars for Khalil as well, and more. And we've used what we've learned through our student loan payoff to still be aggressive, to still be intentional, and to not allow those loans that we did take out to linger. So we try to pay them off as soon as we can.
Right, exactly. And I think another thing is to, as we wrap up here, is just remembering your why, remembering why, like why you're doing this. And I know for us, our why in terms of being aggressive was, we really just desire to build a legacy for our family, for our children and their children, so on and so forth. And there are things that we desire to pass down to our children, wealth. And that's not just financial wealth. We desire to pass down wisdom wealth, showing them how to be good stewards of all that they attain. And so, that for us was what gave us that sense of urgency, because we felt like anything, in this case, a debt, would be a hindrance to that. If there's anything that's a hindrance to building a strong legacy, then we just want to knock it out. We want to get rid of it. And that was really our fuel.
Right. Yeah. And we want to make sure that you guys know as well, any of this would have been possible without the Lord's grace.
Absolutely.
And for him being our focus in the center of our hearts and minds, that's why we desired to give in this process. It wasn't for our own gain. We realized that the finances that we do have are not our own in the first place. We're just stewarding them during our time on earth. So we want to be mindful of how we're using them. So we just want to encourage you as well to not fall in love with the process of moving your money around, but instead ask the Lord, what would you have me do with what you've given me? How can I best serve you and glorify you through what I have? So.
Exactly. No, that's the exclamation mark right there. Yeah. I mean, only by his grace. We saw him do some amazing things during that time. Still doing. Yes. So definitely amen to that. All right, friends. So here's our question of the day for you all. So if you and your spouse have any financial debts of any kind right now, have you both sat down and discussed a strategy for paying them off aggressively? We would love to know in the comments below. And if you are a couple who has a debt payoff story, whether you've paid off a credit card loan or paid off a student loan or whatever it is, we would love to know that as well, so that we can continue to encourage each other through this platform.
Yeah, and if this time was encouraging to you, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and ding the bell. We also would love for you to just stay connected with us through our marriageinsideout.com website. We will be having monthly live trainings and goal setting training programs, and a course actually launching soon as well. So
yes, and as we close, we just want to thank you guys again for tuning in. And remember, your marriage has a mission, and what the Lord has brought together, let nothing and no one separate. Love God and love one another, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.